US President Donald Trump is again raising eyebrows with remarks about US control of the Strait of Hormuz. Trump says that after the US defeats Iran, he could soon declare the strait a US territory. The comments are part of a broader pattern of Trump talking about expanding American control or influence from the Strait of Hormuz to Gaza, Kharg Island and Canada to the Panama Canal and Cuba. Speaking to law enforcement officers in New York, Trump said the Strait of Hormuz would soon become U.S. territory. The strategic waterway links the Persian Gulf with the Gulf of Oman and is one of the world's most important energy shipping routes. Trump also claimed the U.S. effectively controls the strait through its naval blockade of Iranian ports. According to the Wall Street Journal, a White House official later clarified that Trump was joking.
And after we finish defeating Iran, which is being very badly defeated, pretty soon I'll be declaring the Hormuz Strait a territory of the United States. Essentially, that's what it is. We have the blockade. No ships get through unless we want them to.
Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister Kazem Gharibabadi has hit back at Donald Trump's threat to declare the Strait of Hormuz as U.S. territory. He said the strategic waterway cannot be taken over by a tweet, an aircraft carrier, or decree, or even an election speech. He said Iran is not afraid of threats or intimidated by a show of force and insisted that the Strait of Hormuz has been, is and will remain Iranian, adding that it will only be closed or opened under their command. He also urged Trump to stop fantasizing about taking control of the Strait of Hormuz, adding that Iran will continue to impose the blockade. Now, Trump's comments on the Strait of Hormuz come amid a broader series of controversial proposals involving U.S. control or influence over strategic locations around the world. Just 2 months ago, Trump spoke about taking control of Kharg Island, a key Iranian oil export hub. In February 2025, he proposed U.S. take over the Gaza Strip and turn into a Riviera of West Asia. Trump even set his sight on the Panama Canal, repeatedly calling for the U.S. to reclaim it, citing Chinese influence. But it remains under Panamanian control. In the Gulf of Mexico, Trump pushed for renaming the waterway as the Gulf of America, sparking controversy with Mexico, while he vowed to bring Greenland under U.S. control before the conclusion of his presidential term in 2029. And since assuming office, he repeatedly floated the idea of making Canada the 51st state of America. This was shot down by the Prime Minister Carney, who said Canada was not for sale. After capturing Maduro in January this year, instead of taking over Venezuela, remember, Trump administration pursued control and influence over the country's oil revenues. In May this year, Trump also set his sights on Cuba, saying the U.S. could take over the island almost immediately after the war in Iran ends. Well, joining us live from Sterling, Virginia is Lieutenant Colonel Daniel L. Davis, military expert and host of his show on YouTube. Welcome to the broadcast. Colonel, we know that Hormuz is an international waterway, not an American driveway, but there's Iran on one side, Oman on the other, yet Trump says that he can claim it as a U.S. territory. How seriously should we take that? What are the possibilities of that happening?
Listen, you have to take anything that the President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief of the U.S. Armed Forces, you can't just dismiss it. But we have to look at the reality here. As you pointed out in your opening there's many other places that he has claimed that, we may take, whether it's Greenland or the Panama Canal or all kinds of other places. But the reality is that he cannot take over the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, number one, we can't even in the Iranian control of the strait. The last thing we could possibly do is to physically take physical control of it and not be able to, or have the Iranians not be able to do anything about it. They obviously can. So there is no mechanism to do it. We don't have the resources. Even if Iran wasn't there, for the U.S. to go in and take control, that would be a massive undertaking, even under ideal conditions, which we definitely don't have. So I think that this is just rhetoric coming from President Trump, but it is alarming because he does keep talking over and over about territorial acquisitions all over the world, and sometimes he acts on it, like with the Iran situation, like with Venezuela, like what could be coming with Cuba. So you dare not just ignore it, but at least in this particular case, it's just a fantasy.
Don't forget that Trump said Cuba would be next after Iran. The country is already under a decades-long embargo, and Washington is also squeezing its fuel supplies. How far do you think U.S. can go in Cuba beyond economic strangulation?
Well, listen, they can attempt a lot of things, but I mean, number one, Cuba's not Venezuela, and Cubans have a long history of putting up fierce resistance. And look, and unless you have some kind of an inside deal with some government officials, like this very unique situation we had with Venezuela, where it could literally be going in a single day and to basically co-opt the entire government. That's never going to happen in Cuba, or at least it's very unlikely to. And listen, I mean, even when Castro took over in the revolution in the 1950s, the mountainous areas up there were nearly impossible for the Batista government to try to track him down. And then afterwards, a lot of the resistance to Castro himself also spent years in basically guerrilla warfare in those mountains. If we try to go in here, we could find something like probably the closer analogy would be the Bay of Pigs, where we've already had one disaster in Cuba, rather than like making Venezuela too. So if President Trump thinks that one's going to be easy like the Venezuela, I think that everybody would be disappointed and very distressed about that. And we may end up not even succeeding. So there is no rational reason, no threat whatsoever that Cuba poses to the United States that military intervention can solve. And I certainly hope that that also stays in the rhetoric realm.
Colonel Trump has also revived the Monroe Doctrine, even calling it a Dondro Doctrine now, which establishes the preeminence of U.S. in Western Hemisphere. Do you look at it as a broader pattern of Trump seeking to expand U.S. control and its influence?
Well, President Trump, I mean, if we're just being honest, really kind of doesn't care about doctrines or anything else. He only cares about what's in front of him today, what he wants today. That can change tomorrow, and he'll just do something different here. Again, even when you're talking about the resources necessary to have, any kind of a new Monroe Doctrine, so to speak, requires a lot more than what we have here. And listen, this does not make America safer. It does not improve our economy. It makes more people dislike America. It makes more people afraid of America. And when people are afraid, they usually take actions to defend themselves, which is not positive or beneficial to our country, and it's definitely not beneficial to hemispheric peaceful relations. There's a whole lot better ways to get that done than to always be threatening military power everywhere. It just doesn't work, and it's not going to work here. If anything, it's going to end up bankrupting us. But you can't divorce what they're talking about in our hemisphere without looking at what we're also trying to get done unsuccessfully in the Strait of Hormuz, with the Iran war, and with our support in Europe of the Ukraine war against Russia. We're trying to have our forces dispersed so many places in the world, and we will literally bankrupt ourselves and lose all of these if we don't start making some priorities and doing things that make sense.
Colonel Davis, let's also look into the wider scope of all of this. It's not just Hormuz or Cuba. There's Greenland, Canada, Panama, Venezuela, Gaza, different places, but the same discourse of control, territory. How do you see this eventually going? Can sovereignty be negotiable for U.S.?
Well, we have to get back to the physical capabilities. So President Trump had the physical means to attempt the Venezuela operation, and because we had really good intelligence and some basically people turning from against the regime from the inside, That worked there. He's now gone into this war in Iran in February this year that we don't have the resources to. So we have undertaken already in that one an operation that is militarily unattainable. And then we still have not acknowledged that reality. And we continue to keep trying to win it militarily anyway. That is depleting our military capability. When you're talking about the Gaza Strip, that's a bridge way too far. It doesn't matter what he says; it matters what he can do, and he cannot do that because you would have to literally forcibly relocate everyone, and that's what Netanyahu wants to do, and he can't do it. So we certainly wouldn't be able to do it as well unless that situation is peacefully resolved and you get the concurrence of the people. There's nothing going to happen that Trump wants in Gaza, and you can say the same thing with the Panama Canal, with Greenland. He can want to do these things, he can talk about it, but we don't have the resources to get them done. And if he attempts some of those others, it will literally just blow up in our face and still fail. So I think there are enough people in the military, especially, and even some within the administration, that are telling the president, it doesn't matter what you want to do here, sir, we can't do that. And so whatever his appetite is when it comes up to physical constraints, especially given that we're anchored into this disaster in Iran right now, that's going to put a damper on any further attempts.
Right, Colonel Davis. One can't help but wonder if Trump is trying to make America greater again or bigger and wider. But thank you so much for your perspective. And as you rightly said, the capability of U.S. to make sure that Trump's statements are materialized, it always remains in question. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you.